They found 3 bodies in the wine cellar beneath Salvatore Torino's estate on a frost-gripped morning in February 1957. 2 of them were expected. The bullet patterns matched the Don's preferred execution style, that surgical precision of a man who'd ordered his first kill at 19. But it was the 3rd body that made even the hardened detectives from Brooklyn's 78th precinct step back into the February cold, their breath hanging in the air like ghosts refusing to leave. The medical examiner would later write in his report, hands trembling as he typed, that he'd never seen a man beaten with such methodical personal rage. Every bone below the ribcage shattered, teeth scattered across the concrete like ivory dice, and carved into the victim's chest with what appeared to be a broken wine bottle. 4 letters that would never make it into any official record: thief. But here's what they didn't find in that cellar, what the investigators couldn't explain, in their files stamped case closed and buried in the municipal archives. The young woman who'd vanished from the Torino mansion 3 nights before the bodies appeared, Rosa Benedetti, 22 years old, a waitress from a Mulberry Street diner who'd been living under the Don's roof for exactly 6 months. No family came forward to claim her. No missing persons report was ever filed. It was as if she'd been a ghost all along, a beautiful phantom who drifted through one of New York's most powerful crime families and left behind nothing but whispered rumors and 3 corpses arranged like a Renaissance painting of the damned. The question that haunted the few detectives who dared to dig deeper, the question that kept them awake in their shabby apartments, listening to their wives' worried breathing and the distant wail of sirens, was simple and terrible. What did Rosa Benedetti know? What secret was worth 3 lives and a woman's complete erasure from the world of the living? To understand how a poker game on a humid August night could lead to a bloodbath in a Manhattan wine cellar, to comprehend how a 22-year-old waitress could bring the most feared Don in New York to his knees, you have to go back. Back to when Salvatore Torino's empire stretched from the waterfront to Wall Street, when his word was law and his justice was swift and absolute. Back to when his only son, Michael, was still alive, still breathing, still capable of the one act that would destroy everything his father had built over 30 brutal years. August 14th, 1956. The heat that summer had broken men. It rose from the pavement in shimmering waves, turned the tenements into brick ovens, drove even the toughest longshoremen to seek shade in the illegal betting parlors and speakeasies that lined the waterfront like rotting teeth. In the back room of Costello's social club, where the air conditioning unit rattled like a dying animal and expensive cigars fought a losing battle against the stench of nervous sweat, 7 men sat around a table covered in green felt that had absorbed more secrets than a priest's confessional. Salvatore Torino occupied the head of the table naturally. At 63, he carried himself with the upright posture of old-world nobility, his silver hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from the same marble as the Caesars he claimed as distant ancestors. He wore a cream linen suit despite the heat, not a wrinkle visible, not a bead of sweat on his brow. His hands, manicured and steady, moved chips across the felt with the calm of a man who understood that money was merely a way of keeping score in a game that was really about power. To his left sat Vincent, the accountant Gallo, whose nickname was ironic only if you didn't know that his accounting methods involved a blowtorch and a set of pliers. To his right, Anthony Scarpetti, underboss and the Don's oldest friend, a man whose loyalty had been purchased with blood during the Castellamarese War. The others were made men, soldiers who'd earned their seats through violence and silence. Bruno Marchetti, Tommy 2 times Di Napoli, Carlo Esposito, and the man who would not survive to see September, Franco De Luca. The game had been going for 6 hours. It was stud poker, 5-card, high stakes, and Franco De Luca was down $47,000. You could see it in the way his hands trembled as he lifted his cards, in the sheen of sweat that made his face look like melting wax, in the desperate flutter of his eyes toward the door, as if calculating whether he could run, whether there was anywhere in the 5 boroughs, in the entire eastern seaboard, where he could hide from the men at this table. Franco ran 3 social clubs in Bensonhurst, controlled the numbers racket in Bay Ridge, and had built a comfortable life from the percentage he kicked up to the Torino family. But he had 2 weaknesses that would kill him. He believed his luck would eventually turn, and he'd borrowed money from the family's loan fund at rates that compounded like a terminal disease. I need to take a break," Franco said, his voice cracking. He was 41 but looked 60, his hairline in full retreat, his gut pushing against a shirt that had been tailored for a man 20 pounds lighter. "You're down 47 large, Franco," Tommy 2 times said, his nickname earned from his habit of saying everything twice when he was drunk or excited. "You walk now, you walk with a debt. You walk with a debt. I'm good for it. You know I'm good for it." Salvatore Torino hadn't spoken in 30 minutes. He'd been studying Franco the way an entomologist studies a dying insect, with clinical interest and no compassion. Now he set down his cards, folded his hands, and leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. The room's ambient sound, the rattle of the air conditioner, the distant voices from the club's main floor, the muted honk of traffic, seemed to fade into a vacuum of silence. "Franco," the Don said softly, and the softness was worse than any shout. "You're a made man. You're part of this family, but business is business, and tonight business says you owe us $47,000 that you don't have. I can get it. Give me 2 weeks." 2 weeks? Salvatore smiled, and men who'd seen that smile knew that someone was about to bleed. "Franco, you already owe us $63,000 from last month, plus the juice. You're into us for..." "Anthony, what's he into us for with the juice?" Anthony Scarpetti, who'd been doing mental calculations, said, $124,000, give or take." The number hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Franco's face went from red to white to a sickly green. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly. $124,000, Salvatore repeated, savoring each word. "That's a problem, Franco. That's the kind of problem that keeps me awake at night. And when I can't sleep, I get cranky. When I get cranky, people get hurt. You understand? Please, please, Don Torino, I have a wife. I have kids." "You should have thought about your wife and kids before you borrowed money you couldn't pay back, before you tried to double down on a losing streak that's been going on for 6 months. The Don picked up his cigar, examined the glowing tip. "But I'm not unreasonable. I'm a businessman. You have something I might want. Something worth, say, 50,000. We can call that square for tonight, and you can work off the rest over time." Franco's eyes darted around the room, looking for salvation that wasn't coming. "My clubs. I can sign over the Bay Ridge Club. Your clubs are mortgaged to the family already. Try again. My house? Your house isn't worth 30 grand on a good day. Try again." The silence stretched. Franco was sweating so badly now that dark patches bloomed across his shirt. His breathing came in short, desperate gasps, and then his eyes changed, taking on a calculating gleam that was somehow more pathetic than his panic. There's this girl, this waitress at the diner on Mulberry." Vincent Gallo laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "You're gonna pimp out some hash slinger to settle your debt? Jesus, Franco, you're more desperate than I thought." But Salvatore Torino hadn't laughed. He was watching Franco with renewed interest. "Go on." "Her name's Rosa Benedetti. She's 22, beautiful, movie star beautiful. Looks like Sophia Loren, but with green eyes. She works at Lombardi's Diner, been there about a year, lives in a tiny apartment on Elizabeth Street, no family, no boyfriend." Franco was talking faster now, the words tumbling out like dice from a cup. "She owes me money, 5 grand. I loaned it to her for her brother's medical bills, some sob story. But the point is, she's into me for 5 large and she can't pay. She signed a marker. I got her marker. A marker for $5,000, Salvatore said slowly. "And you think she's worth 50? She's worth it. I swear to you, Don Torino. She's the kind of beautiful that makes men stupid. The kind that could work the high-end clubs in Manhattan, could be sitting in boxes at the Copa. She just doesn't know it yet. She's got this innocence, this quality. She'd be perfect for... He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone at the table understood. Perfect for a certain kind of business. Perfect for a certain kind of man who wanted a beautiful woman on his arm and didn't care to ask where she came from or whether she wanted to be there. Salvatore Torino tapped ash from his cigar into a crystal ashtray. He was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, Franco De Luca's fate hung in the balance. Finally, the Don nodded to Anthony Scarpetti. "Anthony, you know Lombardi's." "I know it. Tomorrow morning you go talk to this Rosa Benedetti. You explain to her that her debt has been transferred, that she now owes the family $5,000, and that we're offering her an opportunity to work off that debt in a more refined environment." "And if she says no?" Anthony asked. Salvatore's smile never wavered. "Then you explain to her what happens to people who refuse the family's generosity. You explain it very clearly. I want her at the house by Friday night." Franco sagged in his chair, relief and shame warring on his face. "Thank you, Don Torino. Thank you. You won't regret this. I've bought your marker, Franco. We're square for tonight's game, but you still owe the family 74,000 plus juice. You have 6 months to make that right. If you don't..." The Don didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Franco nodded frantically, gathering up his cards, pushing back from the table. As Franco stumbled toward the door, Salvatore called out, "Franco, if this girl isn't everything you promised, if she's damaged goods or a troublemaker, I'm going to be very disappointed. And when I'm disappointed, I stop being a businessman. I start being something else. You understand? She's perfect, I swear it. She's perfect." After Franco left, Vincent Gallo said, "You're really gonna take some Waitress as payment? That's not like you, Sal." Salvatore Torino was quiet for a moment, studying his cards. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange, distant quality. "My son Michael needs a woman, a nice girl, someone to settle him down, give him some purpose. This girl, if she's half as beautiful as Franco says, could be perfect. A gift, something to remind him of his responsibilities." The other men exchanged glances, but said nothing. Everyone at that table knew about Michael Torino, the Don's only child and greatest disappointment. Everyone knew about the addiction that had turned the once promising heir into a hollow-eyed shadow who disappeared for days at a time, who came home with needle tracks on his arms and lies on his lips. Everyone knew that Salvatore Torino, who controlled an empire built on violence and fear, couldn't control his own son. But no one spoke of it, not if they wanted to keep breathing. As the game continued, as the cards were dealt, and the chips changed hands, and the summer heat pressed against the windows like something alive and malevolent, none of them knew the truth. None of them knew that Rosa Benedetti was not some innocent waitress caught in a debt trap. None of them knew that she'd been meeting Michael Torino in secret for 4 months, that they'd fallen into the desperate, doomed love that flowers in the spaces between one fix and the next. None of them knew that at that very moment, Rosa was lying in her tiny apartment, her hand pressed against her stomach, feeling the first flutter of life growing inside her. And none of them, especially not Salvatore Torino, knew that the child Rosa carried was his grandson. Michael Torino first saw Rosa Benedetti on a Tuesday in April, and it was the first time in 2 years that he'd felt anything other than the hollow ache of withdrawal or the false euphoria of a needle sliding home. He'd been having one of his bad days, the kind where the sunlight felt like razors against his skin, and every sound was an assault. He'd been clean for 72 hours, an eternity, and his father's men were watching him like prison guards. Anthony Scarpetti had driven him to the diner on Mulberry with explicit instructions to eat something, to be seen eating something, because the Don was tired of seeing his only son look like a walking corpse. The family's enemies were starting to whisper. The family's allies were starting to worry, and in their world, worry was the first step toward betrayal. The diner was nothing special. Red vinyl booths cracked from age, a counter with spinning stools, the smell of coffee and frying bacon thick enough to choke on. Michael slid into a corner booth, keeping his back to the wall. Old habits from a childhood spent watching his father conduct business, and tried not to vomit from the mere thought of food. And then she brought him coffee. Rosa Benedetti was 21 years old that April, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that exposed the elegant line of her neck. Her green eyes sharp and intelligent in a way that made Michael think of cats watching birds from windowsills. She wore the standard waitress uniform, black dress, white apron, but on her it looked like something from an Italian film, like she was costume designed for a role she was playing with perfect commitment. "You look like you could use this," she said, setting down the coffee cup. Her voice had a slight rasp to it, like she'd been shouting or crying, and Michael found himself wanting to know which. "I look that bad?" She studied him with a frankness that should have been offensive, but somehow wasn't. "You look like someone who's fighting a war inside his head, and losing." Most people, when they looked at Michael Torino, saw one of two things: either the dangerous son of a dangerous man, or a junkie to be pitied and avoided. Rosa saw him as a person. It was such a novel experience that Michael forgot about his nausea, forgot about the weight of his father's disappointment, forgot about everything except the strange electric connection that seemed to arc between them. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rosa. And before you ask, yes, I know who you are. Everyone on Mulberry Street knows who you are. Then you probably know I'm bad news." She smiled, and it transformed her face from merely beautiful to something that made his chest ache. "Sweetheart, I was raised in Hell's Kitchen. My father was a drunk who beat my mother until she stopped moving, then beat me until I was old enough to run. My brother's dying of cancer in some charity hospital in the Bronx, and I'm 3 months behind on rent in a rat-hole apartment that has more roaches than furniture. You think you're bad news? You're not even in the top 10 of my problems." And that was it. That was the moment Michael Torino, eldest son of the most powerful crime family in New York, fell irrevocably in love with a waitress who served mediocre coffee in a diner that smelled like burnt bacon. Over the next 4 months, they built a relationship in the cracks of Michael's life, in the spaces between his father's surveillance and his own addiction. Rosa worked the morning shift at Lombardi's. Michael would show up at 7 a.m., long before any of his father's men were awake, when the city was still quiet and the possibility of normalcy seemed almost real. They'd talk, just talk, about everything and nothing. About her dreams of opening her own restaurant someday, about his dreams of being something other than his father's heir, about art and music and movies, about anything that wasn't the family business or the needle or the weight of expectations that pressed down on his shoulders like a physical thing. Rosa made him want to be better, not good. He'd given up on good years ago, but better. He started using less, then less still. By June, he'd gone 2 weeks clean, then 3. He could feel his mind clearing, could feel himself returning to something that resembled the person he'd been before the drugs, before the disappointment in his father's eyes became a permanent fixture. In July, on a night when the heat made the city feel like a fever dream, they made love for the first time in Rosa's apartment. The place was exactly as she'd described, cramped, infested, falling apart, but in the darkness, with the broken fan stirring hot air and the sounds of the city filtering through paper-thin walls, it felt like a palace. Afterward, as Rosa lay with her head on his chest, her fingers tracing the scars on his arms, some from needles, some from fights, some from things he didn't want to remember, Michael made a decision. "I'm going to leave," he told her. "Leave the family. Leave New York. Go somewhere they can't find us. California, maybe, or Mexico. Somewhere warm, Somewhere we can start over." Rosa was quiet for a long time. Then, "Your father would never let you go. He doesn't own me, doesn't he?" She sat up, pulling the thin sheet around her shoulders. In the dim light from the street, her face looked older, carved from shadows. "Michael, I'm not stupid. I know what your family does. I know what your father is. Men like him don't let go of things they consider theirs. And you're not just his son. You're his only heir. You're the future of everything he's built. I don't want to be the future of his empire. I want to be a person. I want to be with you. And I want to be with you, but wanting something and getting it are two different things." She lay back down, pressing herself against him. "Maybe we can't run. Maybe the best we can do is steal these moments, these mornings in the diner, these nights in this terrible apartment. Maybe that's enough." "It's not enough for me," Michael said, and he meant it. For the first time in years, he meant something with his whole heart. 2 weeks later, Rosa discovered she was pregnant. She knew immediately, with the strange instinct that some women have, even before the test confirmed it. She was standing in the diner's bathroom, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. And she just knew. Life was growing inside her. Michael's child, the grandson of Salvatore Torino. The terror that followed was chemical, absolute. Rosa had grown up in Hell's Kitchen, had seen what happened to girls who got themselves in trouble, had watched her own mother's life become a prison of diapers and black eyes and quiet desperation. She'd promised herself she'd never end up that way. She'd promised herself she'd die first. But this was different. This was Michael's child. This was the only good thing that had ever happened to her, made solid and real and growing in her womb. She didn't tell Michael, not yet. She needed time to think, to plan. She started saving money. Every tip, every spare dollar went into a coffee can hidden behind a loose board in her apartment. She calculated, with what she had saved, with what she could save in the next 6 months, maybe they could run. Maybe they could disappear before anyone noticed, before Michael's father found out, before the whole terrible machinery of the Torino family turned its attention toward her. But she needed more money. She needed a cushion, a safety net. So when Franco De Luca, who'd been coming to the diner for months, who'd been making eyes at her and dropping hints about his connections, offered to loan her $5,000, Rosa said yes. She signed his marker without reading it carefully because $5,000 was enough to get them to California, to Mexico, to anywhere that wasn't New York. She didn't know that Franco's markers were contracts with the devil. She didn't know that she'd just sold herself to a man who'd sell her to someone worse. She found out on August 15th, 1956, when Anthony Scarpetti walked into Lombardi's diner and sat down at the counter with a smile that never touched his eyes. "Rosa Benedetti," Anthony said, and something in the way he said her full name made every instinct in Rosa's body scream danger. The morning rush was over. The diner was mostly empty. Just old man Genovese in his usual booth, reading yesterday's newspaper and making a single cup of coffee last 3 hours, and a tired trucker at the counter who'd fallen asleep over his eggs. Rosa was wiping down tables, her back aching, her stomach queasy from the morning sickness that hit her like clockwork at 11 a.m. "That's me," she said carefully. "What can I get you?" "Coffee, black, and 5 minutes of your time." Anthony was 58, built like a fire hydrant, with a face that looked like it had been molded from concrete. He wore an expensive suit that fit him perfectly, a gold watch that caught the light, and an air of absolute authority that made Rosa's hands shake as she poured his coffee. She set the cup in front of him. "I'm working." "Your boss won't mind." He glanced toward the back, where Paulie Lombardi was probably going through receipts or yelling at the cook. "Paulie and I go way back. He owes me favors, lots of favors. So sit down, sweetheart. We need to talk about your financial situation." Rosa's blood turned to ice water. She sat. Anthony took a sip of coffee, grimaced. Even he couldn't pretend Lombardi served good coffee, and set down the cup. "You owe Franco De Luca $5,000. Signed marker, dated July 23rd. You aware of this? Yes, I'm going to pay him back. I just need more time. You don't have more time. The marker came due 3 weeks ago. Franco tried to contact you. Anthony pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket, spread it on the counter. It was the marker Rosa had signed, her signature at the bottom, the terms in small print she'd never bothered to read. See this clause here, Section 7. In the event of non-payment, creditor may transfer debt to third party or claim equivalent value in goods or services. You know what that means? Rosa's mouth was dry. No. It means Franco sold your debt. Last night. Poker game. He was in a tight spot, needed to settle up with some important people, so he transferred your marker. You now owe the Torino family $5,000. The name hit Rosa like a fist to the solar plexus. She couldn't breathe. The room tilted, went grey at the edges. Anthony caught her arm, his grip surprisingly gentle, and kept her from sliding off the stool. Easy, sweetheart, breathe. That's it, in and out. He waited until her vision cleared, until she could focus on his face. Now, the Torino family, they're not unreasonable. They understand that a girl working in a diner for tips can't come up with 5 large just like that. So they're offering you an opportunity, a way to work off your debt in a more suitable environment. What kind of environment? Rosa's voice was barely a whisper. The Don has a house, big place up in Westchester. He needs staff, good staff, people who understand the value of discretion. You'd live there, work there, personal attendant duties, maybe hostess work when he has guests, clean work, respectable. 6 months, maybe a year, your debt's paid off, and you walk away clean. Rosa wasn't stupid. She'd grown up on the streets of Hell's Kitchen. She knew what personal attendant duties meant when a powerful man offered them to a young woman with no family and no options. And if I say no? Anthony's face hardened, the gentleness evaporating like steam. Then we have a problem. See, when people refuse the family's generosity, it sends a message. It says they don't respect us. It says they think they're too good for us. And when people disrespect the family, bad things happen, not just to them, to their loved ones, their friends, everyone they care about. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You got a brother in Metropolitan Hospital, right? Johnny Benedetti, cancer ward. The threat was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it took a moment for Rosa to process it. When she did, the rage that flooded through her was so intense she thought she might vomit. You leave my brother alone. He's dying. He has nothing to do with this. Then make sure he dies in peace, Anthony said, and the words were a knife sliding between Rosa's ribs. You show up Friday night, 7 p.m. The address is on the back of the marker. You bring 1 suitcase. That's it. You don't tell anyone where you're going. You don't try to run. You just show up, do your time, and in 6 months you walk away and your brother gets to die without any complications. We understand each other. Rosa nodded. She had no choice. The trap had closed around her so smoothly she hadn't even felt it until it was too late. Anthony stood, dropped a $5 bill on the counter, enough to cover his coffee 10 times over, and headed for the door. He paused, looked back. One more thing. The Don. He's doing this as a favor. He's giving you a chance to make something of yourself. You show up looking like you're ready to work, you keep your mouth shut, you do what you're told, and this could be the best thing that ever happened to you. Some girls, they end up marrying into the family. They end up set for life. You play your cards right, sweetheart. This could be your ticket out of this dump. After he left, Rosa sat at the counter for a long time, staring at the marker with her signature at the bottom. The trucker had woken up and was asking for more coffee. Old man Genovese wanted his check. Paulie was yelling something from the kitchen, but Rosa couldn't move. She was trying to think, trying to find a way out, and coming up with nothing. That night, she finally told Michael. He came to her apartment just after midnight, climbing the fire escape like he always did to avoid being seen. Rosa was sitting on the mattress on the floor. She didn't have a proper bed, with her knees pulled to her chest. When she looked up at him, Michael knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. What happened? He was beside her in an instant, hands on her face, searching for injuries. "Did someone hurt you? I need to tell you something," Rosa said. "Two things. And I don't know which one is worse." She told him about the marker first, about Franco's visit to the diner, about Anthony Scarpetti's offer, about the impossible choice she'd been given. Michael's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, fury, before settling into something cold and murderous. "You're not going," he said flatly. "I'll talk to my father. I'll explain." "You can't tell your father." "Rosa, he doesn't know you. He doesn't know we—" Michael stopped, understanding finally dawning. "You said two things. What's the second thing?" Rosa took his hand, pressed it against her stomach. "I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. It's yours. It's ours." The silence that followed felt like falling. Michael stared at her, his hand warm against her belly, his eyes wide with an emotion Rosa couldn't name. Then suddenly he was laughing. It was a sound Rosa had never heard from him, full and genuine and completely unhinged. This is perfect," he said, still laughing. "Don't you see? This changes everything. We tell my father about the baby, about us. He's been trying to set me up with someone for years, trying to get me married off, get me to produce an heir. If he knows you're carrying his grandchild—" "Michael, no." Rosa grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. "Think about this. Really think. Your father just bought my debt. He's bringing me into his house to work off that debt, doing God knows what. If we tell him I'm pregnant with your baby, what do you think he'll do?" Michael's laughter died. He'll be angry, but he'll get over it. Family is everything to him. A grandchild from some Hell's Kitchen waitress who's been sneaking around with his son behind his back. A grandchild from a woman he bought like property in a card game. Rosa's voice was sharp, cutting through Michael's delusion. "Your father has a plan for you. A plan that probably involves some nice Italian girl from a connected family, someone who will strengthen his position, someone he can control. I'm not part of that plan. I'm a complication, and I've seen what men like your father do to complications. He wouldn't hurt you, not if you're carrying his grandchild." "Are you sure? Are you absolutely 100% sure?" Rosa watched the certainty drain from Michael's face. "Because I'm not, and I can't risk it. I can't risk our baby." They sat in silence for a long time, the weight of their situation pressing down on them like a physical force. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice hollow. "What do we do?" Rosa had been thinking about this all day, running through scenarios, searching for any path that didn't end in blood and tears. "I go to your father's house on Friday. I do whatever he asks. I keep my head down, stay quiet and wait. You don't acknowledge me, you don't talk to me. As far as anyone knows, we've never met. I'm just some girl your father acquired, no one important. I work off the debt, and in 6 months, I leave. By then, I'll be showing, but maybe not too much. Maybe I can hide it, and when I walk out of there, we run, we take the baby, and we disappear." 6 months. Michael's voice cracked. "You're asking me to watch you living under my father's roof for 6 months and do nothing? I'm asking you to keep our baby alive. That's all that matters now." Michael pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. She could feel him shaking, could feel the desperation in the way he held her. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "I can't watch him. If he touches you, if he hurts you, then don't watch. Go back to using, be the disappointment he expects. Stay out of his way. The less attention you draw to yourself, the less attention he'll pay to me. You're asking me to shoot poison into my veins and pretend I don't care about you. I'm asking you to survive." Rosa pulled back, looked him in the eyes. "Please, Michael, for me, for our baby, promise me you'll stay away. Promise me you won't do anything stupid." And because he loved her, because he was weak, because the addiction was always there, waiting just beneath the surface like a faithful dog, Michael promised. On Friday night, August 17, 1956, Rosa Benedetti arrived at the Torino estate with a single battered suitcase and a secret growing in her womb. As she walked through the iron gates, as the massive house rose before her like something from a Gothic novel, she touched her stomach once, briefly, and made a silent promise to the life inside her. Whatever happens, I'll keep you safe. Whatever it costs, you'll survive. She had no idea how much it would cost. None of them did. The Torino estate sat on 12 acres of Westchester County, surrounded by walls high enough to keep out everything except ambition and dread. The house itself was a monument to Salvatore Torino's rise from the tenements of Little Italy. 3 stories of stone and dark wood, with gabled windows that watched the driveway like judgmental eyes. Gardens sprawled across the grounds, meticulously maintained by a staff of 5. A tennis court nobody used, a swimming pool that glittered like a cut throat in the summer sun. Everything about the place screamed money and power, and the kind of taste that could only be bought, never inherited. Rosa was met at the door by Maria Castellano, the housekeeper, a woman in her late 60s who'd served the Torino family for 40 years and had developed the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much and said too little. Maria looked Rosa up and down with the clinical assessment of a livestock appraiser, noting the cheap suitcase, the Woolworth dress, the carefully applied makeup that couldn't quite hide the dark circles under Rosa's eyes. "You're late," Maria said, though Rosa had arrived exactly at 7. "I'm sorry. Come with me, I'll show you your room. The Don wants to meet you in an hour. You'll wash, change into something appropriate, and present yourself in his study at 8 o'clock precisely. Not 7:59, not 8:01, 8 o'clock, you understand?" Rosa nodded. She was led through corridors lined with oil paintings, Italian landscapes, religious scenes, portraits of stern men in 19th century dress. The house smelled of lemon polish and cigar smoke, and something else, something Rosa couldn't quite name, but that made her skin crawl. Old money. Old sins. Her room was on the 2nd floor at the end of a hallway that seemed to stretch into infinity. It was small but clean, with a single bed, a dresser, a crucifix on the wall, and a window that looked out over the garden. A maid's room, a servant's room, a prison with nice linens. "You have 45 minutes, Maria said. "There's a dress in the closet, wear it, don't use too much makeup. The Don prefers a natural look." She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. "A piece of advice, girl. Keep your head down. Do your work. Don't ask questions. Don't develop opinions. And for the love of God, stay away from Michael." Rosa's heart stuttered. "Michael, the Don's son. He lives here when he's not—" Maria's lips pursed with distaste. "You'll see him around. He's troubled, sick. The Don indulges him because blood is blood. But don't get any ideas. Girls like you, they see a handsome boy from a rich family and they start thinking they can climb that ladder. They end up at the bottom of a river. You understand me?" "I understand." After Maria left, Rosa sat on the bed, her hands shaking. She pulled the dress from the closet. It was expensive, far nicer than anything she'd ever owned, a deep blue that would bring out her eyes. Someone had known her size exactly. Someone had been paying very close attention. She washed in the small bathroom attached to the room, changed into the dress, and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked like someone else, someone refined, someone who belonged in a place like this. It was a costume, a disguise, and for the first time, Rosa understood that this was how girls like her survived in places like this, by becoming someone else entirely. At exactly 8 o'clock, Rosa knocked on the door of Salvatore Torino's study. "Enter." The study was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes that looked unread, a massive desk that could have doubled as a dining table. Salvatore sat behind that desk, a glass of scotch at his elbow, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed a ledger. He didn't look up when Rosa entered, didn't acknowledge her presence for a full minute while she stood in the doorway, uncertain whether to step forward or wait. Finally, he set down his pen, removed his glasses, and looked at her. Rosa had prepared herself for this moment. She'd steeled herself to meet a monster, to face down the man who'd bought her like livestock. But nothing prepared her for the shock of seeing Salvatore Torino up close and recognizing with sickening clarity where Michael had gotten his eyes. The same shape, the same deep brown that could look warm or cold depending on the angle of the light. Father and son. Blood and legacy. "Rosa Benedetti," Salvatore said. It wasn't a question. "Franco said you were beautiful. For once he undersold something. Thank you, Mr. Torino." Rosa's voice was steady, a small victory. "You understand why you're here? To work off my debt." "That's part of it." Salvatore stood, moved around the desk with the grace of a much younger man. He was tall, well built for his age, and moved with an economy of motion that suggested violence held barely in check. "But let me be clear about something, Rosa. I didn't bring you here just to clean my house. I have staff for that. I brought you here because I need someone I can trust around my family. Someone smart, someone observant, someone who understands that loyalty is rewarded and betrayal is punished." He circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. Rosa forced herself to stand still, to not flinch, to meet his eyes when he came back around. "My son, Michael. You'll see him around the house. He's troubled, sick. He's fighting a battle and he's losing. I've tried everything, doctors, hospitals, priests. Nothing works. He needs structure. He needs someone watching him. Someone who can report back to me about his activities, his friends, his habits." Understanding crashed over Rosa like ice water. She wasn't here as a maid. She was here as a spy, a watcher. And her target was the father of her child. "You want me to inform on your son?" Rosa said carefully. "I want you to help me save my son's life." Salvatore's voice was sharp. "Every day, he's one bad decision away from death. One tainted dose, one deal gone wrong, one moment of weakness with the wrong people. I need eyes on him when my men can't be there. I need someone he might trust, might confide in, someone who can get close." The irony was so bitter Rosa could taste it. Get close to Michael. Report back to his father. All while hiding the fact that she'd already gotten close enough to create life. "I'm not sure I'm the right person." "You're exactly the right person." Salvatore moved back to his desk, poured himself more scotch. He didn't offer Rosa any. "You're young. You're beautiful. You're not connected to the family, so he won't see you as one of my spies. If you play this right, he might actually talk to you. And when he does, you tell me everything. Who he's meeting, what he's using, where he's getting it, everything." "And if I refuse?" Salvatore's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. "Then we have a very different conversation. One that ends with you understanding exactly how generous I'm being by offering you this opportunity instead of other options." Rosa thought of her brother in his hospital bed, thought of the baby growing inside her, thought of Michael's promise to stay away, to not draw attention. She was trapped in a cage of her own making, and the bars were closing tighter with every second. "I understand," she said. "Good." Salvatore sat back down, picked up his pen. "Maria will explain your daily duties. You'll have access to most of the house. My private rooms are off limits, so is Michael's room, unless he invites you in, which, for the record, you should report immediately if it happens. You'll attend family dinners when I require it. You'll be present for certain social events. You'll be seen, but you won't speak unless spoken to. You're a servant, Rosa. A very well-treated servant, but a servant nonetheless. Don't forget it." "I won't." "One more thing." Salvatore looked up, and his eyes were Michael's eyes, and Rosa felt something twist in her chest. "If you try to run, if you betray my trust in any way, I won't just hurt you, I'll erase you. I'll make it so no one remembers you ever existed. Your brother will die alone. Your friends will forget your name. You'll be a ghost. Do you believe me?" "Yes." "Then we understand each other. Welcome to the family, Rosa. I hope you survive it." The first 2 weeks in the Torino household, Rosa lived in a state of constant, gnawing terror. She woke each morning in the small maid's room, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach, still flat, still giving nothing away, and wondered if today would be the day everything unraveled. She moved through the massive house like a ghost, learning its rhythms, its secrets, the way sound carried through the old pipes, the way certain doors stayed locked and others opened too easily. She saw Michael exactly 3 times in those first 2 weeks, and each encounter was agony. The first time was at breakfast on her 3rd day. Rosa was serving coffee. One of her assigned duties was to help with morning meals. When Michael wandered into the dining room at 11 a.m., looking like death warmed over, his eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking, his clothes rumpled like he'd slept in them, or not slept at all. He barely glanced at Rosa as she poured his coffee, and she saw in that deliberate non-recognition that he was keeping his promise. Stay away. Pretend we've never met. Salvatore, seated at the head of the table with his newspaper and toast, looked up at his son with barely concealed disgust. You look like shit, Michael. Thanks, Pop. Always know how to make a guy feel special. Where were you last night? Out. Michael grabbed the coffee cup, drained it in 3 gulps despite the heat. Don't worry. I wasn't doing anything that'll embarrass the family. Just needed some air. Air that smells like a distillery and cheap perfume, apparently. Salvatore folded his newspaper with precise, controlled movements. I've arranged a meeting for you this afternoon. Anthony's going to take you to the docks. We've got a shipping problem that needs attention. Simple logistics. You think you can handle that without fucking it up? Michael flinched at his father's tone but nodded. Yeah, I can handle it. Good, because I'm tired of making excuses for you. I'm tired of cleaning up your messes. You're 32 years old, Michael. You should be running crews, making real money, preparing to take over. Instead, you're wasting your life and my patience. There's a limit to both. Rosa kept her head down, refilling coffee, trying to be invisible, but she could feel the tension in the room like a living thing, could hear the desperate sadness beneath Michael's casual tone. And when he finally left, stumbling slightly, catching himself on the doorframe, she had to bite the inside of her cheek to keep from following him. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Rosa heard footsteps in the hall outside her door. They paused. She held her breath, her heart hammering. A shadow moved across the gap beneath the door, waited, then continued on. The second time she saw Michael was worse. It was late afternoon, and Rosa was in the library. She'd been sent to dust, though the books looked like they hadn't been touched in years, when Michael appeared in the doorway. He looked better than he had at breakfast, more put together, but there was something hollow in his eyes that made Rosa want to weep. "You're the new girl," he said, and his voice was perfectly neutral. Stranger talking to stranger. "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir. Makes me feel like my father." He moved into the library, running his hand along the spines of books. "You read?" "When I can. Most of these are in Italian. The old man likes to pretend he's cultured. He's not. He's just rich." Michael pulled out a volume, Dante's Inferno, and flipped through pages he clearly wasn't seeing. "You know what the 9th circle of hell is?" "Betrayal," Rosa said quietly. Michael's eyes snapped to hers, really looking at her for the first time. For a moment his mask slipped, and she saw the longing there, the desperate need to just talk to her, to touch her, to acknowledge what they had. Then the mask slammed back into place. "Smart girl," he said, putting the book back. "Bet my father loves that. Nothing he appreciates more than someone he can mold." He moved toward the door, paused. "Word of advice. Whatever he's told you to do, whatever he's promised you, don't believe it. Everything here is a trap. Everyone's trapped, even the ones who think they're free." Then he was gone, leaving Rosa alone with the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light and the taste of tears at the back of her throat. The third time was an accident. Rosa had been in the kitchen helping Maria prepare dinner. The Don was hosting some business associates, and the meal needed to be perfect. when she realized she'd left her notepad in the study. She hurried back, not wanting to interrupt Maria's meticulous preparations, and almost collided with Michael in the hallway outside the study. He caught her by the shoulders to steady her. For a moment, they stood there, so close Rosa could smell the faint scent of his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. His hands tightened on her shoulders, his jaw clenched with the effort of not pulling her close. "Sorry," Rosa managed. "I wasn't watching." "Rosa!" Her name barely a whisper. "Are you okay? Is he treating you?" Footsteps on the stairs. Someone coming. Michael released her immediately, stepped back, his face going blank. Rosa fled to the study, grabbed her notepad, and hurried away without looking back. But she'd heard the raw need in his voice, the fear, and she knew that his promise to stay away was costing him everything. By the end of the second week, Rosa had compiled a mental map of the house and its inhabitants. There was Salvatore, of course, the sun around which everything orbited. There was Maria, who'd seen too much and said too little. There was Anthony Scarpetti, who came and went at odd hours and always looked at Rosa like he was calculating her value to the penny. There were the soldiers who guarded the gates, the men in expensive suits who arrived for late-night meetings in the study, the mysterious phone calls that Salvatore took in his private rooms with the door locked. And there was Michael, a shadow moving through his father's house like a ghost who couldn't remember how to haunt properly. Rosa established a routine. She woke early, helped Maria with breakfast, cleaned the upstairs rooms, attended to whatever tasks Salvatore required. She was present but invisible, helpful but not overeager. She learned which conversations to interrupt and which to pretend she hadn't heard. She learned that Salvatore liked his coffee black, his scotch neat, and his lies delivered with absolute sincerity. She learned that the house had cameras in some rooms but not others, that certain phone lines were tapped and others weren't, that privacy was an illusion carefully maintained to give the inhabitants a false sense of security. And she waited. Waited for her body to betray her, waited for Michael to crack, waited for the whole delicate house of cards to collapse. On her 15th night in the Torino house, Rosa woke to the sound of retching from the bathroom down the hall. She lay in the darkness, listening to someone's violent illness, and knew without looking that it was Michael. Withdrawals or overdose or just the accumulated poison of his life coming back up. She wanted to go to him, wanted to hold his head, wipe his mouth, tell him it would be okay, even though it wouldn't. She stayed in bed, kept her promise the way he'd kept his. In the morning, Maria mentioned casually that Michael had been taken to the hospital the night before. Nothing serious. Happened all the time. He'd be back in a few days. Salvatore didn't mention it at all. He ate his breakfast, read his paper, and talked on the phone about shipping schedules and territorial disputes, as if his only son wasn't lying in a hospital bed somewhere, having his stomach pumped for the 3rd time that year. It was that moment, watching Salvatore butter his toast with the same careful attention he'd give to ordering a hit, that Rosa understood the real horror of the situation. Michael wasn't trapped by drugs. He was trapped by his father's absolute indifference to anything except the family's legacy. She was carrying the grandchild of a man who saw his own son as nothing more than a disappointing investment. And when that child was born, Salvatore would see it the same way. The realization hit Rosa with such force that she had to excuse herself to the bathroom, where she knelt on the cold tiles and tried not to vomit. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her stomach, feeling the subtle curve that hadn't been there a week ago, the small but unmistakable evidence of life growing inside her. She had to get out, had to run, had to take Michael and their baby and disappear before Salvatore Torino's world consumed them all. But she had no money, no car, no allies. And outside the gates of the estate, Anthony Scarpetti's men watched everything, waiting for exactly this kind of desperation. So Rosa went back to work, smiled when expected, bowed her head when appropriate, and began to plan, piece by piece, step by careful step, how to rob a monster and survive it. Michael came back from the hospital on a Tuesday, 3 days after he'd been carried out. Rosa was cleaning the second-floor windows when she heard the car pull up, heard the slam of doors and Anthony's gruff voice giving instructions to someone. She moved to a different window, one that overlooked the driveway, and watched as Michael emerged from the black Cadillac. He looked thinner, paler, like a plant starved of sunlight. But his eyes were clear in a way Rosa hadn't seen since before she'd arrived. They detoxed him. Again. Flushed the poison out, lectured him about responsibility and family and all the empty words that meant nothing when you were back in the house where the pain started, where the weight of expectation crushed you slowly every day until you needed the drugs just to breathe. Michael looked up at the house, and even from a distance Rosa could see the despair on his face. This was his prison, and he'd just been dragged back to his cell. That night, Salvatore hosted a dinner to celebrate Michael's return. Celebrate was the Don's word, though it felt more like a public sentencing. Rosa was required to serve, to move between the dining room and kitchen, to be present but unnoticed as Salvatore held court at the head of the table with 6 of his most trusted men around him: Anthony, Vincent, Tommy 2 times, Carlo, and 2 others Rosa didn't recognize, but who had the cold eyes of career killers. Michael sat at his father's right hand, picking at his food, saying little. He'd been given a haircut and a shave, forced into an expensive suit, made presentable. But you couldn't force him to be present, and Rosa could see him retreating into himself, becoming smaller with every passing minute. "To my son," Salvatore said, raising his wine glass. "Back from the edge. Again. May he finally learn that the only thing worth dying for is family. Everything else is just noise." The men around the table raised their glasses, muttered their agreement. Michael raised his glass, drained it in one long pull, and set it down hard enough to make the crystal ring like a bell. "Easy, Michael," Anthony said quietly. "Wine's not water." "Thanks for the lesson, Anthony. I'll try to remember it between the beatings and the lectures." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Salvatore set down his fork with exaggerated care. "You have something to say, Michael? Something on your mind you'd like to share with everyone?" "No, Pop, just tired. Hospital beds aren't known for their comfort." "Then maybe you should try harder not to end up in them." Salvatore's voice was soft, dangerous. "This is the 3rd time this year, Michael. The 3rd time I've had to make calls, pay off doctors, explain to our associates why my heir is a fucking disaster. Do you have any idea what that costs? Not just money. Respect. Fear. When people see weakness, they start to think they can take advantage. They start to think the Torino family is vulnerable. Then maybe you should find a different heir." Michael's voice was flat, dead. "Plenty of guys out there who'd kill to be your son." "Literally." Vincent Gallo laughed, a sound like grinding gears. "Kid's got a point, Sal. Why waste your time on damaged goods when—" "Enough." One word, and the room went silent. Salvatore looked at Michael with an expression Rosa couldn't quite read. Anger, yes, but something else. Disappointment, grief. The complicated mess of emotions that fathers feel for sons who refuse to be what they're supposed to be. "You're my son," Salvatore said finally. "My blood. That means something. That means everything. I don't give up on family, Michael, even when family gives up on themselves." It should have been touching, a father refusing to abandon his troubled son. But Rosa heard the chain in those words, the unbreakable obligation that bound Michael to this house, this family, this life he didn't want. Love as imprisonment, family as a cage. The dinner continued in tense silence. Rosa moved between the rooms, refilling wine glasses, clearing plates, her mind racing. Michael was clean now, clear-eyed. This was her chance, maybe her only chance, to talk to him, to plan, to figure out how they could possibly escape. After dinner, the men retired to the study for brandy and business. Rosa was cleaning up in the kitchen when Maria touched her shoulder, made her jump. "The Don wants to see you," Maria said. "In his study. Now." Rosa's stomach dropped. "Did I do something wrong?" "How should I know? When the Don calls, you go. That's all there is to it." Rosa walked through the darkened house, her heart pounding. She'd been so careful. Had she slipped? Had someone seen her looking at Michael too long, caring too much? Had Salvatore somehow divined the secret growing in her belly? She knocked on the study door. "Come in, Rosa." The men from dinner were gone. It was just Salvatore, sitting behind his massive desk, a glass of brandy catching the lamplight. He gestured to a chair across from him. Rosa sat, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "You've been here almost 3 weeks, Salvatore said conversationally. "Maria tells me you're a good worker, quiet, efficient, no complaints." "I try to do my job well, Mr. Torino." "And your other job? The one we discussed when you arrived?" Salvatore leaned forward. "What can you tell me about Michael?" Rosa had prepared for this, had rehearsed answers in the shower, in the moments before sleep, in the endless stretches of time when she had nothing to do but worry. "He seems lost, Mr. Torino, like he doesn't know where he belongs." "Lost?" Salvatore tasted the word, found it wanting. "He's not lost, Rosa. He's running. Running from responsibility, from his legacy, from everything he's supposed to be." "Has he talked to you? Confided in you?" "No, sir. He barely acknowledges me." "That'll change. Give it time. Once he's settled back in, once he realizes you're not going anywhere, he'll start to trust you. Men like Michael, they're lonely, desperate for connection, desperate for someone who sees them as more than just a disappointment." Salvatore swirled his brandy. "When he opens up to you, I want to know everything. Who he's meeting, what he's planning, if he's using again. Everything. Of course, Mr. Torino." "There's something else." Salvatore stood, moved to the window overlooking the dark garden. "I'm thinking of arranging a marriage for Michael. A good match. The daughter of an associate in Boston. Connected family, good bloodlines. It would strengthen our position in New England, open up new opportunities. But Michael needs to be presentable for that. Clean, sober, capable of acting like a man instead of a child. That's where you come in." Rosa's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. I want you to keep him company, not sexually," Salvatore added quickly, though the clarification somehow made it worse. "Just be around him, talk to him, make him feel less alone. Men do stupid things when they're lonely. They chase oblivion because they can't face the emptiness. You give him something to look forward to, someone to talk to, and maybe he'll stay away from the needle long enough for me to marry him off and secure the family's future. You want me to be his friend while spying on him for you? I want you to be useful." Salvatore turned and his eyes were cold. "Don't pretend to be naive, Rosa. You know what world you're in now. You know what's expected. You do this, you help me save my son, and your debt is paid. You walk away clean in 6 months. You refuse, and we find other uses for you. Less pleasant uses. Do you understand?" Rosa understood perfectly. She was supposed to get close to Michael, earn his trust, report back to his father, and help facilitate his marriage to another woman, all while hiding the fact that she was carrying Michael's child. All while their baby grew inside her, taking up more space, demanding more resources, making it harder to hide. It was an impossible situation, a trap with no exit. And yet, she heard herself saying, "I understand, Mr. Torino. I'll do whatever you need." "Good girl." Salvatore smiled, and it was his son's smile, and Rosa wanted to scream. "Start tomorrow. Spend time with him, get him talking. And remember, I hear everything that happens in this house. Everything. Don't try to be clever, Rosa. Just do your job." As Rosa left the study, her legs barely holding her, she passed Michael's room on the 2nd floor. The door was ajar. She could see him inside, sitting on the edge of his bed in the dark, his head in his hands. Every instinct screamed at her to go to him, to hell with the cameras and the consequences. But Salvatore's words echoed in her head. "I hear everything." So she kept walking, went back to her small room, sat on the narrow bed and tried to think of a way out that didn't end with all of them dead. Outside, the August night was heavy and still, pressing against the windows like something alive. In her womb, their baby was growing, cell by cell, heartbeat by heartbeat, a ticking time bomb that would detonate the moment anyone discovered it. Rosa had two options: run now, with no money and no plan, almost certainly getting caught and disappearing forever, or stay, play Salvatore's game, and hope she could figure out an escape before her body gave away her secret. It wasn't really a choice at all. The next morning, Rosa knocked on Michael's door at 10 a.m., carrying a breakfast tray: coffee, toast, eggs, orange juice. She'd been instructed by Maria to bring it, to insist that Michael eat something even if he refused. Another test, another opportunity to prove her usefulness. "Go away!" Michael's voice came through the door, rough with sleep or tears or both. "I have breakfast, Mr. Torino. Your father insists." "I don't care what my father insists. Leave it in the hall. I'll get it later." Rosa could have done that, should have done that. Instead, she opened the door. Michael was still in bed, shirtless, the sheets tangled around his waist. Even in the dim light filtering through the heavy curtains, Rosa could see the landscape of his suffering, the needle tracks on his arms, the bruises from falls or fights, the terrible thinness that made his ribs stand out like prison bars. But his eyes were clear, and when he saw her, really saw her, his entire body went rigid. "What are you doing?" he said, low and urgent. "You can't be in here. If my father, your father, sent me. He wants me to keep you company, to help you, feel less alone." Rosa set the tray on the nightstand, kept her voice neutral, professional, but her hands were shaking, giving her away. Michael stared at her, understanding dawning. "He's using you, making you spy on me. Jesus Christ, Rosa, don't." Rosa glanced around the room, looking for cameras. She didn't see any obvious ones, but that meant nothing. "Don't say anything, just, can you eat? Please? For me." The "for me" slipped out before she could stop it. Not professional, not neutral. Michael heard it, and something in his face cracked open, showing the raw need beneath. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "Really?" "I'm fine." "You're lying." "I'm surviving. That's all either of us can do right now." Rosa picked up the coffee cup, held it out to him. "Please, eat something. Keep up your strength." Michael took the cup, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity up Rosa's arm, made her want to throw the tray aside and climb into his arms and damn the consequences. Instead, she stepped back, maintaining the careful distance that might keep them both alive. "He wants me to get married," Michael said suddenly. "Some girl in Boston, daughter of one of his associates. He's already making arrangements, talking to her family, building his alliances on my back." "I know." "He told you. He tells me a lot of things. He thinks I'm useful." Rosa's voice was bitter. "He thinks I can help fix you." Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nobody can fix me, Rosa. I'm too broken, too far gone. The best thing you could do is stay away from me. Do what he says, serve your time and get out. Don't let me drag you down." "What if I don't want to stay away?" The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Michael set down the coffee cup, his hands trembling. "You have to. If he finds out about us, about what we were..." "Were," Rosa interrupted. Past tense. "Rosa, do you still love me?" She knew it was dangerous, knew she was breaking every rule of survival she'd set for herself. But she needed to know, needed to hear it. "Or was I just something that happened when you were looking for a way out of the needle?" "Don't," Michael's voice cracked. "Don't ask me that." "Why not?" "Because the answer will make everything worse." He stood up, moved toward her, and Rosa saw him fighting himself, fighting the desperate need to close the distance. "Because if I tell you I love you, If I tell you I think about you every second, that you're the only good thing that's ever happened to me, that I'd burn this whole house down just to touch your face one more time. If I tell you that, what does it change? We're still trapped. We're still fucked. Love doesn't fix that. Rosa reached up, touched his face, felt the stubble, the warmth of his skin, the way he leaned into her palm like a man dying of thirst reaching for water. Love doesn't fix it, but it's something. It's the only thing that's ours. We can't, the cameras. There are no cameras in here. I checked the wiring. I've been checking everywhere. Your father watches the hallways, the common rooms, the garden, but not the bedrooms, not yet. He has some shred of something that keeps him from violating that privacy, at least for now. Michael pulled her close. So suddenly Rosa gasped. His arms wrapped around her, his face buried in her hair, and she felt him shaking. "I'm so scared," he whispered. "I'm so fucking scared, Rosa. He's going to find out. He's going to hurt you. I can't protect you. I can't even protect myself." "Then we run. We leave. Tonight. Right now." Rosa pulled back, looked up at him. "We steal a car. We drive. We don't stop until we're in Mexico or Canada or anywhere that isn't here. We figure it out as we go. He'll find us. You know he'll find us." "Maybe. But at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have had a few days where we were free." She took his hand, pressed it against her stomach. "All three of us." Michael's eyes widened, his hand spread across her belly, feeling for the curve that was barely there. "The baby! You're still..." 13 weeks. Everything's okay, but I'm starting to show. In a few more weeks, I won't be able to hide it. When that happens, when your father figures it out..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Jesus. Michael sank to his knees, his ear pressed against her stomach, listening for a heartbeat he couldn't possibly hear yet. "What have we done? We made something beautiful in a terrible place," Rosa said, running her fingers through his hair. "And now, we have to keep it safe, however we can." They stayed like that for a long moment. Michael kneeling, Rosa standing, their child growing between them like a secret that would soon be too big to keep. Then Michael stood, his face hardening with a resolution Rosa had never seen before. "Okay," he said, "we run, but not tonight. We need money, cash, enough to disappear properly. And we need to make sure my father doesn't come after us. That means..." He stopped, shook his head. "We need leverage, something to keep him from sending his men after us, something that would hurt him worse than losing me." What could hurt him worse than losing his only heir? Michael's smile was dark, dangerous. "Losing his empire. And I know exactly how to make that happen." Michael's plan was simple in concept, catastrophic in execution. For 30 years, Salvatore Torino had built his empire on 3 pillars: the waterfront unions, which gave him control over shipping and imports, the protection rackets that blanketed Little Italy and parts of Brooklyn, and the books, the meticulously maintained ledgers that tracked every dollar, every debt, every piece of leverage the family possessed. Those ledgers were the real power. They contained names of corrupt officials, records of payoffs, details of murders covered up by cooperative police captains. They were insurance, blackmail material, and a roadmap to the entire organization, all rolled into one. And Michael knew exactly where his father kept them. "The wine cellar," he told Rosa, his voice low, urgent. They were in his room, the door locked, speaking in whispers, even though Michael insisted there were no listening devices. "Nobody goes down there except my father, not even Anthony. It's his private space, his sanctuary. That's where he keeps the real books, not the sanitized versions he shows the accountants, but the actual records. 30 years of crimes, payoffs, and bodies. If we take those books, if we threaten to give them to the FBI or the press, he can't come after us. He'd be too busy protecting himself." Rosa felt a chill run through her. "And you know how to get in?" "I've been in once. When I was 16. Found him down there, drunk, crying over my mother's picture." Michael's face clouded with the memory. "She died when I was 12. Cancer. He kept her jewelry in the cellar. hidden away like treasure. He caught me trying to take a bracelet. I was going to sell it by, well, you can guess. He beat me so badly I couldn't walk for a week, but before he did, I saw the safe, the combination lock. And my father, drunk as he was, he kept muttering the numbers while he put her jewelry away. Birth dates, his, my mother's, mine. 6 digits. I never forgot them. That was 20 years ago, Michael. He's changed the combination. Maybe, maybe not. My father's sentimental about strange things. He never changed my mother's room, never remarried, never removed any of her photos. There's a part of him that's frozen in time, in the moment she died. I'm betting the combination is still the same. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but Rosa could see in Michael's eyes that he needed this, needed to believe there was a way out that didn't involve running blind with nothing but hope and desperation. When? She asked. Friday night. He's got a meeting in the city. Big sit-down with the other families, settling territorial disputes. He'll be gone all night. We go into the cellar, get the books, and we're gone before dawn. We drive to Canada. It's only 6 hours. By the time he realizes what happened, we'll be across the border. And if the combination doesn't work... Michael's jaw tightened. Then we improvise. But one way or another, Rosa, we're leaving Friday night. I'm not watching you hide in this house one more day. I'm not watching my child grow in the shadow of his lies. Over the next 3 days, they planned with the methodical care of soldiers preparing for battle. Michael, for the first time in years, was clean and clear-headed. He stopped making excuses to leave the house. He ate meals with his father, attended to minor family business, played the role of the dutiful son trying to reform. Salvatore, pleased by this apparent progress, relaxed his scrutiny. Even Anthony Scarpetti commented to Maria that maybe the boy was finally growing up. Rosa continued her duties with careful precision. She served at meals, cleaned rooms, carried messages between Salvatore and his men, and she watched. She learned the guards' routines, memorized which exits were monitored and which were blind spots. She noted that the wine cellar door was at the back of the kitchen, behind a false pantry wall that swung open on hidden hinges. She observed that Maria went to bed early, that the night guards focused on the perimeter rather than the interior, that between midnight and 2 a.m., the house settled into a vulnerable quiet. She also watched her body change. The subtle curve of her stomach was becoming less subtle. Her breasts were fuller, tender. She'd started wearing looser dresses, adjusting her posture to hide the evidence. But time was running out. Maria had already made one comment about Rosa looking healthy, with a knowing glance that made Rosa's blood run cold. Thursday night, the night before their planned escape, Rosa couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, her hand on her stomach, feeling the occasional flutter that might have been the baby or might have been fear manifesting as movement. She thought about her brother Johnny, dying in his hospital bed, about whether he'd wonder what happened to her when she disappeared. She thought about the life growing inside her, about what kind of world she was bringing a child into. She thought about Michael and whether love was enough to survive what they were about to do. Around 2 a.m. she heard her door creak open. Rosa sat up, her heart hammering, expecting Maria or one of Salvatore's men. Instead, Michael slipped into the room, closing the door silently behind him. He moved to her bed, knelt beside it, and in the darkness, Rosa could see tears on his face. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I'm so fucking scared, Rosa. What if I get you killed? What if—" She pulled him onto the narrow bed, wrapped herself around him. "We're already dead if we stay. At least this way we die trying." They made love that night with a desperate intensity, trying to memorize each other, trying to prove through touch and breath, and whispered promises that they were real, that this was real, that love could exist even in a house built on violence and lies. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking in whispers about the future they'd build in Canada. Michael would get a job, something simple, something far from his father's world. Rosa would open a small restaurant like she'd always dreamed. Their child would grow up not knowing the weight of the Torino name, not knowing what blood they carried in their veins. It was a beautiful dream. It was almost certainly a lie. But for those few hours before dawn, lying in the darkness with their baby between them, they believed it anyway. Michael left before sunrise, slipping back to his room. Rosa lay awake, watching the sky lighten through her window, and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Keep us safe. Just get us through tomorrow night. That's all I'm asking. Friday came too fast and too slow. The hours crawled and raced simultaneously, time becoming fluid and strange. Salvatore left the house at 6 p.m., dressed in an expensive suit, Anthony and Vincent flanking him. He'd be gone until at least 2 a.m., maybe longer if the negotiations were difficult. Michael played cards with Tommy 2 times and Carlo in the parlor, making a show of normalcy. Rosa helped Maria with dinner, served the men, cleaned up afterward. At 10 p.m., Maria announced she was going to bed, complaining of a headache. The guards changed shifts. The house settled into its nighttime rhythm. At 11:30, Michael tapped softly on Rosa's door. It's time. They moved through the darkened house like ghosts, avoiding the few remaining guards, keeping to the shadows. The kitchen was empty, the massive stove cold, the smell of dinner still hanging in the air. Michael went to the pantry, pressed his hand against a specific section of wall, and a door swung open on well-oiled hinges. Beyond was darkness. Stone steps leading down into the earth. Michael produced a flashlight from his jacket pocket. The beam cut through the blackness, revealing a narrow staircase descending into what felt like the underworld. The temperature dropped immediately. The cellar was underground, naturally cool. Perfect for wine storage, perfect for hiding secrets. They descended together, Rosa's hand tight in Michael's, her other hand instinctively protecting her stomach. The stairs seemed to go on forever, down and down, into the bowels of the house, into the foundation upon which Salvatore Torino had built his empire. The cellar was larger than Rosa expected. Rows upon rows of wine racks stretched into the darkness, bottles covered in decades of dust. The air smelled of earth and fermentation and something else. Old leather, old paper, old blood. At the far end of the cellar, past the wine racks, was a heavy wooden door with an iron lock. Michael's flashlight played across the door. That's it. That's where he keeps everything. The lock was modern, expensive, and far beyond their ability to pick. But beside the door, set into the stone wall, was a safe. Old style with a combination dial. Michael knelt before it, his hands remarkably steady. He spun the dial, clearing it, then slowly input the numbers. Click, click, click. Rosa held her breath, praying, begging, pleading with whatever forces governed the universe. The safe clicked open. Inside were 3 leather-bound ledgers, each one thick as a Bible. Michael pulled them out with reverent care, his hands shaking now. He opened the first one, flipped through pages filled with neat handwriting. Names, dates, amounts, crimes catalogued with accounting precision. Jesus, Michael breathed. This is everything. Everything. Murders, payoffs, senators on the take, judges in his pocket. If this ever got out, a sound from above, footsteps on the kitchen floor. Rosa and Michael froze, the flashlight beam steady on the open ledger. The footsteps paused, then continued, moving away. Just one of the guards making rounds. "We need to go," Rosa whispered. "Now." Michael closed the ledger, grabbed all 3, shoved them into the canvas bag he'd brought. They moved back through the wine racks, toward the stairs, and that's when the lights came on. Salvatore Torino stood at the top of the stairs, blocking the exit. Behind him, Anthony Scarpetti. Behind Anthony, 3 more men with guns drawn. The Don looked at his son, at Rosa, at the bag containing his ledgers. His face was absolutely calm, which was somehow worse than rage would have been. "I had a feeling," Salvatore said quietly. "A father's instinct. So I came home early, told the boys I wasn't feeling well. Imagine my surprise when I find my son and my maid sneaking into my private cellar." His eyes moved to the bag. "What's in the bag, Michael?" Michael said nothing. His hand found Rosa's, squeezed once. "Nothing to say? That's not like you. You always have something to say. Usually something disappointing." Salvatore descended the stairs slowly, deliberately. Anthony and the others followed. "Let me guess. You were going to steal my books, my insurance, hold them over me, force me to let you walk away. Was that the plan?" "Something like that," Michael said. His voice was steady, which surprised Rosa. "And where were you planning to go? Canada? Mexico? Somewhere you thought I couldn't reach?" Salvatore was at the bottom of the stairs now, 6 feet away. The flashlight beam made his shadow enormous on the cellar wall. "Michael, I'm disappointed. I thought I raised you to be smarter than this. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "Notice what?" Michael's hand tightened on Rosa's. "Notice that you were in love with her, with my little maid, with the girl I brought into this house specifically to watch you." Salvatore laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think I don't see everything? You think I don't know about your little morning visits to the diner? About your secret romance?" "Michael, I knew from the beginning. I knew the day Anthony went to collect her." Rosa felt the ground drop out from under her. You knew?" "Of course I knew. Anthony reported everything. I have people everywhere, Rosa. Eyes everywhere. You were never invisible. You were never safe. And when I found out my son was fucking some waitress, when I learned he was planning to run away with her, I saw an opportunity." Salvatore's smile was cold, calculated. "I bought your debt. I brought you here. I put you under my roof where I could control you, where I could use you to control him. A leash on my son, disguised as a love story." "You bastard," Michael said, his voice shaking now with rage. "You manipulative bastard. I'm practical. I'm a businessman. And you, Michael, you're my investment, my legacy. You don't get to throw that away for some pregnant whore from Hell's Kitchen." The word hung in the air like a detonation. Rosa felt Michael's entire body go rigid beside her. "How did you—" Rosa started, but she already knew. Her changing body, her subtle attempts to hide it. Salvatore saw everything. "How far along is she, Michael? 3 months? 4? Salvatore's voice was conversational, but his eyes were dead. "My grandchild, growing in the belly of a woman who thought she could steal from me. The irony is almost beautiful." "We're leaving," Michael said. "You can't stop us." "Can't I?" Salvatore gestured, and his men moved to flank them, cutting off any escape. "Anthony, take the books, carefully." Anthony Scarpetti descended the stairs, his face expressionless. He reached for the bag, and Michael jerked it away. Don't fucking touch them." "Michael," Salvatore's voice hardened. "Give Anthony the books, now, or I will have my men beat Rosa until she miscarries. Is that what you want? You want your child's blood on this floor?" The threat was delivered with such casual brutality that for a moment Rosa couldn't process it. Then she felt Michael's hand release hers, felt him shove the bag at Anthony. "Good boy," Salvatore said. "You're learning. A little late, but learning nonetheless." Anthony took the books, carried them back up the stairs. Salvatore watched him go, then turned his attention back to Michael and Rosa. "Here's what's going to happen," the Don said. "Rosa, you're going to have that baby, here, in this house, where I can make sure it's born healthy. Michael, you're going to marry the girl in Boston like I planned. You're going to do your duty to this family, and when the baby is born, we'll decide what to do with it. Maybe I'll let you raise it. Maybe I'll give it to someone else. Maybe I'll drown it in the bathtub. Depends on how cooperative you both are." "You're insane," Rosa said. "You're a fucking monster." Salvatore moved so fast, she barely saw it. His hand cracked across her face, sent her stumbling backward. Michael lunged at his father, got 2 steps before Anthony was on him, arm around his throat, choking him. "You don't talk to me like that," Salvatore said to Rosa, his voice still calm. "You don't have that right. You're nothing. You're less than nothing. You're a mistake I'm allowing to exist because you're carrying my blood. But make no mistake, your life only has value as long as that baby does. After it's born, you're disposable." He turned to Michael, still struggling in Anthony's grip. "And you, my disappointment of a son. I've given you every chance, every opportunity to be what you should be. And you spit on it all for this? For her?" Salvatore shook his head. "I should have known. Your mother was too soft. Made you soft. Maybe I should have beaten it out of you earlier." "Let him go," Rosa said. "Please, I'll do anything. Just let him go." "Anything?" Salvatore considered this. "Strip." Silence. Then Rosa, her voice shaking. "What? You heard me. Take off your clothes right now. I want to see what my son was willing to throw his life away for. I want to see what makes you so special." "No!" Michael gasped, still choking in Anthony's grip. "No, don't." "It's okay," Rosa said quietly. Her hands went to her dress, began unbuttoning. Each button felt like a small death, but she'd do it. She'd strip naked in front of these men if it meant Michael lived. She'd endure anything. She was halfway through the buttons when Salvatore laughed. "Stop. Jesus, you're pathetic, both of you." He waved his hand, and Anthony released Michael, who collapsed to his knees, gasping. "I'm not going to rape you, Rosa. I'm not a savage, but I needed to see how far you'd go. Needed to know if you really loved him, or if this was just some scheme to get your hands on family money." "I love him," Rosa said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "I've always loved him." "Then you're both fools." Salvatore moved to the wine racks, selected a bottle, examined the label. "Love is a weakness, a vulnerability. In our world, it gets you killed." He set down the bottle, looked at them both. "But you're family, so I'm going to give you one chance. One. Michael, you go to Boston tomorrow, you meet the girl, you court her properly, and in 6 months, you marry her. Rosa, you stay here, you have the baby. After it's born, we'll arrange for you to disappear. New identity, new city, enough money to start over. You never contact Michael again. You never try to see your child. You vanish. In exchange, you both live. That's the deal." "That's not a deal," Michael said, finding his voice. "That's a prison sentence. It's survival. Take it or leave it. But if you leave it, if you try to run again, if you betray this family one more time," Salvatore's voice dropped to a whisper, "I will kill her slowly. I will make you watch, and then I'll kill you. And I'll raise your child to be everything you should have been. Do we understand each other?" They understood. Of course they understood. You couldn't misunderstand a man like Salvatore Torino. His threats weren't bluffs. His promises weren't negotiations. He'd meant every word, and the weight of that certainty crushed them both as they were escorted back upstairs. Michael to his room, Rosa to hers, both now under explicit guard. Rosa lay in her bed that night, her hands on her stomach, and tried to think of a way out. There wasn't one. They were trapped more thoroughly than before, their desperation now a weapon Salvatore held against them. She thought about the baby, about whether it would be better to not exist at all than to grow up in this family under this man's control. She thought about Michael, about whether his love was worth the price they were both paying. Around 3 a.m., she heard a sound outside her door. Not a knock, a scraping, like metal on metal. Then her door swung open, and Michael stood there with a kitchen knife in his hand and blood on his sleeve. "The guard?" Rosa whispered. "Unconscious. Not dead. I didn't have time to... We need to go, right now. Michael, your father said..." "Fuck what my father said." Michael pulled her up, pressed the knife into her hand. "I'm not living without you. I'm not letting him take our baby. We run, and if he catches us, if he kills us, at least we tried. At least we didn't just lie down and accept his prison." They moved through the house for the second time that night, past the unconscious guard, past the other men who were either asleep or too distracted to notice. They made it to the garage, where 6 cars sat in neat rows. Michael went for the oldest one, a 1950 Chevrolet that wouldn't be missed immediately, and found the keys hanging on the pegboard where they always were. They were in the car, engine running, hope rising like bile in their throats, when the garage lights blazed on. Franco De Luca stood in the doorway flanked by two men Rosa had never seen before. Franco, the man who'd sold her to Salvatore, who'd started this entire nightmare, looked nervous and excited and guilty all at once. "Sorry, Michael," Franco said, and he actually did sound sorry. "Your father called me an hour ago, said you might try something stupid, said there'd be a bonus for whoever stopped you." He pulled out a gun, pointed it at the windshield. 50 large, that's what you're worth to me right now, so turn off the engine and get out of the car. Both of you." Michael's hands tightened on the wheel. Rosa saw him calculating, saw him considering ramming through, trying to run Franco down, taking the chance. She put her hand on his arm. "Don't. He'll shoot. You'll die, and for what? We still won't get away." "Rosa, I know." She kissed him, quick and desperate. "I know, but we have to be smarter. We have to wait for a better moment." They got out of the car. Franco's men grabbed them, hauled them back into the house. This time, Salvatore was waiting in the parlor, fully dressed despite the hour, a glass of scotch in his hand. "Franco," he said, not looking at Michael and Rosa, "you've done well. The money will be in your account tomorrow. Thank you, Don Torino." "Thank you. I'm glad I could. You can go now." Franco left quickly, probably sensing that staying in the Don's presence a moment longer than necessary was unwise. Salvatore gestured to the men holding Michael and Rosa. "Take them to the cellar, both of them. I need to think about what to do." And that's how they ended up back in the wine cellar, locked in the room beyond the heavy door, the place where Salvatore kept his secrets. The room was small, windowless, furnished with only a single chair and a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Michael and Rosa clung to each other in the darkness, listening to the sound of footsteps above, waiting for the door to open, waiting for Salvatore to come down and pass judgment. Hours crawled by. Rosa dozed fitfully, her head on Michael's shoulder. When she woke, he was crying silently, his tears hot against her forehead. "I failed you," he whispered. "I failed both of you. I should have been smarter, should have planned better, should have—" "Shh, don't. We tried. That's more than most people in our position would have done. It's not enough. Trying isn't enough. It's all we have." When the door finally opened, it wasn't Salvatore who entered. It was Anthony Scarpetti, and behind him a man Rosa had never seen, tall, thin, with wire-rimmed glasses and the careful demeanor of a professional. A doctor, Rosa realized. Her stomach clenched. "The Don wants to make sure the baby is healthy," Anthony said, "before he decides what to do with you." The examination was clinical, impersonal, humiliating. The doctor confirmed what Rosa already knew. 13 weeks pregnant, everything normal, heartbeat strong. He delivered his findings to Anthony, packed up his bag, and left without making eye contact with either of them. After he was gone, Anthony stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. I liked you, Michael. You were a good kid before the drugs, and you, Rosa, you got dealt a bad hand. But this is what it is. This is the family." "Fuck the family," Michael said. Anthony nodded slowly. "Yeah, fuck the family." He closed the door, locked it. His footsteps faded up the stairs. They waited. Noon came and went. Rosa could tell by the rumbling in her stomach, by the angle of the thin line of light under the door. Afternoon. Evening. No one brought them food or water. Salvatore was letting them marinate in their fear, letting them understand exactly how powerless they were. It was past midnight when they heard new footsteps on the stairs. Multiple people. The door opened and 3 men entered. Not Salvatore's regular crew, but outsiders. They had the look of professionals, men who did wet work for money rather than loyalty. "Michael Torino," one of them said. "Rosa Benedetti, come with us." They were led upstairs, not to Salvatore's study, but to the garage. 2 cars waited, engines running. Michael and Rosa were separated. Him in one car, her in another. And Rosa's last glimpse of Michael was his face pressed against the rear window, his mouth forming words she couldn't hear. The car drove for what felt like hours. Rosa sat in the back seat between two silent men, her hands zip-tied in front of her, her mind racing through possibilities. They were going to kill her, dump her body somewhere remote, or maybe sell her, ship her off to some other family, some other prison. Maybe Salvatore had decided the baby wasn't worth keeping after all. But when the car finally stopped, Rosa found herself not in some remote killing field, but at a small house in what looked like Queens. Modest, unremarkable, the kind of place no one would notice or remember. The men led her inside, untied her hands, and left her in a bedroom with bars on the window. "What is this?" Rosa called after them. "Where's Michael? What's happening?" One of them paused at the door. "The Don's orders. You stay here until the baby's born. You'll be provided for. Doctor visits, food, everything you need. After the birth, we'll talk about next steps. Don't try to escape. There are men watching the house at all times. You understand?" Rosa understood. She was in a different prison now, but still a prison. And somewhere, Michael was in his own cage, living his own version of this nightmare. The months that followed blurred together into a haze of captivity and waiting. Rosa was, as promised, well cared for. A doctor came weekly. Food appeared regularly. She had books, a television, everything except freedom. Her stomach grew. The baby kicked and turned and reminded her daily that this wasn't just about her anymore. She never saw Michael, never heard his voice. The men who watched her were professionals, immune to questions or bribes or tears. They were courteous but remote, guards doing a job. Rosa thought about escape constantly, mapped the house, noted the patterns of the guards, looked for weaknesses, but she was 5 months pregnant, then 6, then 7, her body heavy and slow and vulnerable. Any escape attempt would endanger the baby. So she waited and plotted and wondered if Michael was doing the same. It was in her 8th month that Anthony Scarpetti came to visit. He arrived one grey February afternoon, let himself in like he owned the place, found Rosa in the living room reading a book about pregnancy she'd already memorized. "You look good," Anthony said, settling into a chair. "Healthy. The Don will be pleased. Is that why you're here? To report on my health?" "I'm here because we need to talk. About Michael." Rosa's heart stuttered. Is he okay?" "Depends on your definition of okay. He's alive, clean mostly. The Don's got him in a facility upstate, nice place, expensive. They're monitoring him around the clock, making sure he doesn't use, doesn't run, doesn't do anything stupid. He asks about you constantly, about the baby. Tell him I'm fine. Tell him—" "I can't tell him anything," Anthony interrupted. "The Don's orders. No contact between you two, ever. As far as Michael's concerned, you disappeared. The Don told him you miscarried, that the stress was too much, that you were released from your obligations and sent away. Michael thinks you're gone." The cruelty of it hit Rosa like a physical blow. Why? Why would he do that? Because the Don's decided on a different plan. The baby, when it's born, he's going to raise it himself. Tell everyone it's his, from a brief affair. A late-in-life child cementing his legacy. You'll be paid off, given a new identity, sent somewhere far away. And Michael will marry the Boston girl like planned, never knowing his child survived. No. Rosa stood, her hands protective over her swollen belly. No, absolutely not. He can't, I won't. You don't have a choice, Rosa. Anthony's voice was almost gentle. You never did. The Don holds all the cards. You're just a piece on his board. But I'm here to offer you something. A way out. Rosa waited, not daring to hope. In 2 weeks, the Don is throwing a party. Big event. All the families will be there. It's going to be at the estate, the Westchester house. Security will be heavy, but there will be chaos. Lots of people, lots of movement. If someone wanted to slip away in that chaos, wanted to grab some insurance and disappear, Anthony pulled out a key from his pocket. set it on the table. "That's a spare key to the wine cellar safe. The combination hasn't changed. The books are still there." Rosa stared at the key. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I'm tired," Anthony said simply. "Tired of watching the Don destroy everyone around him. Tired of being part of his machine. Your kid, Michael's kid, deserves better than growing up to be another Salvatore Torino. And Michael, he deserves to know his child lived, that you fought for him. If I do this, if I steal the books and run, he'll know you helped me. He'll kill you." Anthony smiled, and for the first time, Rosa saw the man beneath the enforcer, the human beneath the muscle. Maybe, or maybe I'll tell him the truth, that I'm done, that I'm retiring, moving to Florida, living out whatever years I have left somewhere warm. He can accept it or not. Either way, I'm finished with this life. He stood, moved toward the door. "The party is 2 weeks from Friday, February 13th. Ironic, right? I'll make sure you're transported back to the main house that morning, under the pretense that the Don wants you close for the final weeks. After that, you're on your own. Get the books. Get out. Find Michael. He's at the Brookhaven facility in Poughkeepsie. Take your son and disappear." "Son?" Rosa's hand went to her belly. "How do you—" "The doctor told the Don. I overheard. It's a boy." Anthony's smile was sad. Michael always wanted a son. Maybe he'll actually get to raise him now. After Anthony left, Rosa sat for a long time with the key in her hand, feeling its weight, understanding that this was her last chance. Last hope. She could play it safe, have the baby, let Salvatore take him and send her away to live in comfortable exile. Or she could fight one more time. One last desperate gamble. She thought of her own father, the drunk who'd beaten her mother to death. Thought of the cycle of violence that ran through families like poison in the water. Thought of her son, Michael's son, growing up under Salvatore's tutelage, learning to be cold and cruel and powerful. No, not her child. Not if she had any breath left to fight with. Rosa began to plan. February 13th, 1957. The Torino estate blazed with light, music, and the carefully orchestrated chaos of a major mob gathering. 5 of the New York families were represented, plus delegations from Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago. It was a show of force, a display of unity, a message to the world that organized crime was alive, thriving, and more powerful than ever. Rosa had been brought back to the estate that morning, installed in her old room on the 2nd floor. She'd grown so large that movement was difficult, her belly enormous with the weight of her son. The doctor had said any day now, maybe even tonight, the stress could trigger labor. Rosa hoped it wouldn't. She needed a few more hours, just a few more. The party was in full swing by 8 p.m. Rosa watched from her window as expensive cars disgorged men in expensive suits, women in evening gowns, the whole grotesque pageant of criminal royalty. Salvatore held court on the main terrace, a king among killers, accepting tribute and allegiance with the gracious authority of someone who'd earned his power through 3 decades of calculated violence. Rosa waited until 11. The party had reached its peak. Drunk enough to be distracted, not drunk enough to be suspicious. She'd dressed carefully, had stolen a maid's uniform from the laundry. The disguise wouldn't hold up to scrutiny, but in the chaos, she might pass unnoticed long enough to reach the cellar. She made it down the servants' stairs without incident. The kitchen was a hurricane of activity, caterers rushing back and forth, preparing dishes, clearing plates. Rosa slipped through like a ghost, found the pantry, pressed the hidden panel. The door to the cellar swung open. The descent felt longer this time, each step an eternity. Her belly made the stairs treacherous, and she had to grip the rail to keep from falling. But she made it to the bottom, to the heavy door, to the safe set in the stone wall. The key Anthony had given her fit perfectly. The safe opened, and inside, exactly as promised, were the 3 ledgers. Rosa grabbed them, stuffed them into the canvas bag she'd brought, and turned to leave. Franco De Luca, stood at the base of the stairs, blocking her exit. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Franco smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd just hit the jackpot. "Twice," he said wonderingly. "I catch you twice trying to steal from the Don. The universe is looking out for me, Rosa. First time earned me 50 grand. Wonder what this time is worth." "Franco, please, I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm not going to hurt anyone. Just let me go." "Let you go?" Franco laughed. "Are you insane? Do you know what those books are worth? What the Don would pay to keep them secure? I'm talking hundreds of thousands. I'm talking enough to pay off all my debts and then some." He moved toward her, and Rosa saw the gun in his hand. "Put down the bag, Rosa. Nice and slow." Rosa's hand found the wine bottle. It was pure instinct, pure desperation. She swung it with all her strength, with all her fear, with all her rage at Franco for starting this nightmare. The bottle connected with Franco's temple with a sickening crack. He went down hard, blood spreading across the stone floor. Rosa stood over him, shaking, the broken bottle still in her hand. She'd never hurt anyone before, never imagined she could. But motherhood did something to you, made you capable of terrible things. Franco was still breathing, unconscious, bleeding, but alive. Rosa stepped over him, started up the stairs. She made it halfway before someone grabbed her from behind. The hands were strong, professional, and entirely ungentle. Rosa was dragged back down the stairs, the ledgers torn from her grip. When she was spun around, she found herself face to face with Vincent, the accountant Gallo. "Well, well," Vincent said, studying the ledgers. "Looks like the Don's little science experiment has some bite after all. He's going to want to hear about this. Come on." Vincent hauled her up the stairs, through the kitchen, now completely silent, the caterers frozen in shock, and into Salvatore's study. The Don was there with Anthony and 3 other men, reviewing something on the desk. They all looked up when Vincent entered with Rosa. Salvatore's face went through several expressions: surprise, understanding, and finally, cold fury. "I found her in the cellar," Vincent said, holding up the ledgers. "With these. Franco De Luca's down there, bleeding. She cracked his skull with a wine bottle." "Is he dead?" Salvatore asked calmly. "Don't think so. But he's hurt bad." "Good. I never liked Franco anyway." Salvatore's eyes fixed on Rosa. "Anthony, did you give her the key?" Anthony Scarpetti didn't flinch, didn't look away. "Yeah, I gave her the key." "Why?" "Because she deserves a chance. Because Michael deserves to know his son. Because I'm done being part of your machine, Sal. I'm out. After tonight, I'm gone, moving to Florida. You want to stop me? You know where I'll be." The room was silent. You could hear the party continuing outside, music, laughter, the sound of people who had no idea that in this study, everything was about to go to hell. Salvatore poured himself a scotch with steady hands. 30 years, Anthony. 30 years you've been with me. And this is how it ends. You betray me for some pregnant whore and my junkie son? This isn't betrayal, Sal. This is me finally doing the right thing. The right thing. Salvatore tasted the words, found them bitter. He turned to Vincent. "Kill him. Make it quick. I'll tell everyone Anthony had a heart attack. Too much stress. Too much rich food. People will believe it." Vincent drew his gun. Anthony didn't move, didn't beg. He just looked at Rosa and nodded once, as if to say, "Run when you can." The gunshot was shockingly loud in the enclosed space. But it wasn't Anthony who fell. It was Vincent. Michael Torino stood in the doorway, a gun in his shaking hand, his face a mask of desperate determination. Behind him, chaos, the party disintegrating into screams and panic as guests heard the gunshot. "Let her go!" Michael said to his father. His voice was steady despite the trembling of his hands. "Let both of them go. Anthony, Rosa, the baby, let them walk out of here, or I swear to God I'll kill you." Salvatore looked at his son, at the gun, at the absolute conviction in Michael's eyes. For the first time in his life, the Don seemed uncertain. "You're high. You're using again. You don't know what you're doing." I'm not high, I'm sober. For the first time in 10 years, I'm completely fucking sober. And I'm done. Done with your empire. Done with your expectations. Done with you. Michael's finger tightened on the trigger. I'm taking my family and leaving. You can let us go, or you can die. Choose. The standoff lasted forever and no time at all. Rosa, her hand on her enormous belly, felt her son kick, hard, urgent, as if he too understood the stakes. Anthony, bleeding from a graze where Vincent's dying shot had caught his shoulder, slowly got to his feet. And Salvatore Torino, the man who'd built an empire on fear and violence, did something none of them expected. He laughed. You won't shoot me, Michael. You're weak. You've always been weak. That's why you needed the drugs. That's why you failed at everything I tried to give you. You can't even pull a trigger without shaking like a leaf. Michael shot his father in the leg. Salvatore went down with a scream, clutching his thigh. Blood spread across his expensive trousers, across the Persian rug. The other men in the room went for their guns, but Anthony, moving with the speed of someone who'd been doing violence for 30 years, grabbed one of them, put him in a chokehold, and used him as a human shield. "Nobody move!" Anthony roared. "The next person who reaches for a gun, I snap his neck." The room froze. Outside, the party had dissolved into complete chaos. People running, cars starting, someone shouting about calling the police. In the study, Salvatore Torino bled on his expensive rug and stared at his son with something that might have been respect, if it wasn't overwhelmed by pure hatred. "You're dead," Salvatore gasped. "All of you, dead. I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." "No, you won't," Michael said quietly. He moved to his father's desk, grabbed the ledgers from where Vincent had dropped them. "Because if you come after us, if you send anyone after us, these books go to the FBI. Every name, every crime, every dirty secret you've been hoarding for 30 years. You'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison, watching your empire crumble. Those books are my insurance, and now they're mine. Our insurance. Rosa's, Anthony's, and mine." Michael moved to Rosa, took her hand. "Let's go." They backed out of the study, Anthony still holding his hostage, Michael's gun still pointed at his father. They made it to the garage, to the same 1950 Chevrolet Michael had tried to escape in months ago. This time, with gunfire echoing behind them and sirens wailing in the distance, they made it out the gates. They drove through the night, Rosa in the back seat with her hands on her belly, Michael driving with desperate concentration, Anthony navigating with a road map spread across his lap. They made it to the Brookhaven facility. Michael had indeed been kept there, had escaped that evening specifically to save Rosa, and then continued north. The baby came at a rest stop just shy of the Canadian border. Rosa's water broke in the car, contractions hitting her like hammer blows. There was no time for a hospital, no time for anything except Michael pulling over and Anthony, who'd delivered his cousin's baby 30 years ago in the back of a truck, talking Rosa through it with surprising gentleness. Their son was born at 4 a.m., February 14th, 1957, Valentine's Day, born in blood and pain and desperate love in a rest stop bathroom while his father held his mother and his surrogate uncle kept watch at the door. They named him Antonio, after Anthony. Anthony Michael Benedetti, Rosa's last name, severing him from the Torino legacy. They crossed into Canada as the sun rose, 3 adults and a newborn baby, and in the rearview mirror, they watched America fade into the distance. The newspapers reported it as a tragedy. Michael Torino, only son of the powerful businessman Salvatore Torino, had suffered a complete breakdown at his father's Valentine's Day party. In a drug-fueled rage, he'd shot and killed 3 men, Vincent Gallo, Franco De Luca, who'd bled out in the wine cellar, and an associate named Carlo Esposito, who'd tried to stop him. Michael had then disappeared, presumably fleeing to avoid prosecution. Salvatore Torino recovered from his leg wound. He gave interviews expressing his heartbreak over his son's actions, his hope that Michael would get the help he needed. The authorities searched for Michael but found nothing. He'd vanished like smoke. No mention was made of Rosa Benedetti, no mention of Anthony Scarpetti's disappearance, no mention of the stolen ledgers. The Torino family never recovered its former power. Without the insurance of those books, without the blackmail material that had kept politicians and judges in line, Salvatore found himself vulnerable. Other families moved in on his territory. By 1960, the Torino Empire had crumbled, and Salvatore himself died in 1962, not from violence, but from a stroke, alone in his massive house. In the archives of the Brooklyn Police Department, in a file that was sealed and then lost in a reorganization in 1973, there's a single photograph. It was taken by a crime scene photographer in the Torino wine cellar on the morning of February 14, 1957. It shows 3 bodies arranged on the floor, and if you look closely, you can see something the official report never mentioned: a broken wine bottle covered in blood, and next to it, a single footprint in the dust. Small, feminine, pointed toward the stairs, toward escape, toward freedom. In a small town outside Vancouver, British Columbia, there's a restaurant called Antonio's. It's been there since 1962, run by the same family for over 60 years. The founder was a quiet man named Michael Benedetti, who ran the place with his wife Rosa and his business partner Anthony Scarpetti, until Anthony died peacefully in his sleep in 1971. The restaurant is known for its authentic Italian food, its warm atmosphere, and the black and white photos on the walls, pictures of a young couple with a baby growing older together, building a life. If you ask the current owner, Antonio Benedetti Jr., who runs the place now that his father has retired, about those photos, he'll tell you his parents met in New York, fell in love, and moved to Canada to start fresh. A simple story, a love story, nothing dramatic. He never mentions the ledgers his father kept in a safe deposit box until the day he died, insurance that was never needed because Salvatore Torino never came looking for them. He never mentions the nightmares his father used to have, the way he'd wake screaming about wine cellars and blood on stone floors. Some stories are better left untold. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. But on February 14th every year, on what Antonio Jr. thinks of as simply his birthday, his father would always raise a glass and make the same toast: to escape, to freedom, to love that costs everything and gives back more. And if you looked closely, you'd see the small scar on his mother's hand from a broken wine bottle. You'd see the way his father's hand still shook sometimes when he was stressed. You'd see the weight of the story they carried, the price they'd paid for their freedom. You'd see that some prisons you break out of, others you carry with you forever, but at least they carried it together.